Today we will review 6th grade math lesson 5.2. This lesson will cover how to represent ratios and rates with tables and graphs. Here's your I can statement. I can use a table or graph to find equivalent ratios and use the ratios to solve problems and explain my solution methods to others. So we have some vocabulary for today. We want to make sure we take the time to write these down. We have rate, unit rate, and equivalent ratios. So a rate is a ratio that compares two different quantities or measurements. For example, they're quantities that are in different units. So it's two quantities that have different units. For example, 60 miles per hour. So I'm comparing miles to hours. So that's what's going for here to explain a little bit more in detail what a rate is. Unit rate is a rate in which the second quantity in comparison is out of 1 unit. You can use a unit rate to explore other relationships. So, for example, a unit rate is 60 miles per hour because it's meaning 60 over 1 is the unit rate. And then equivalent ratios are two different ratios that express the same relationship between two numbers. And we've been talking about these earlier in previous lessons. For example, if I have 4/10 and I divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2, I get 2/5. Therefore, 2/5 and 4/10 are equivalent ratios. We will be reviewing problems today that are similar to homework on page 151 in your student workbook, if you'd like to refer to that. I encourage you to pause this video and complete these problems on your own first, and then come back and watch the video afterwards. Victoria's family is driving on vacation. The car is traveling at a constant rate of 60 miles per hour. 60 miles per hour, remember that's your unit rate because it means per 1 hour. The other thing I want you to look at is the two quantities where they're saying that it's at a constant rate here, but the rate is comparing the two quantities. So my two quantities in this problem are hours and miles. So if you're looking here in the table, this here shows your quantities. If you're looking at a graph, this tells you your quantities. So let's look at the table first. Complete the table to show how many miles are driven for each hour shown. We know that it's 60 miles per hour. So we can fill that in based on what was given in the problem. And then we use equivalent ratios to find the other relationships. That's step 2. So if I have 60 miles per hour, I know if I multiply that by 2, the denominator, I must do it to the numerator. So I would get 120 for every 2 hours. That's how I would get this column right here. And then I would do the same thing again if I wanted it for 3 hours. If I multiply the hours times 3, that's the denominator, I must do the same to the numerator. So I get 180 for 3 hours, and that's where I'm getting this information. If you graph the data from the table and you're looking at your hours to the time, again, we're looking here, and for 1 hour, which is my unit rate, here's 1 hour, it's 60. So if I'm graphing it, this is your X and that's your Y. So if I graph the first one, my X is 1 and my Y is 60. If I graph the second point, it would be 2 and, 120. And then it would be 3, 180, and so on. And that's where they're getting the points here on the graph. All right, let's go on to question 1. A car rental company advertises a special rate on its website. So we know we're going to have 2 different quantities in different units here. It charges the same amount for each day rented. Complete the table to show the total cost of the rental for different number of days. So here is my 2 quantities, and my 2 quantities in this problem are days and cost. Here it has given me the unit rate for 1 day. So it gave me the cost per day, meaning 1 day, is $75, and that's the cost per day. And this is my unit rate. And that is given right here in blue. So what we need to do then is we need to go ahead and use our equivalent ratios once we have my unit rate to fill in the rest of the chart. So if I have 75 over 1, what am I going to get for 4 days? Well, I would multiply both the numerator and denominator by 4, and I would get 300 for 4 days. $300. I would do the same thing for 5 days. I would do 75 times 5 and 1 times 5. That would give me 5 days. So the cost for 5 days would be $375. And the opposite of multiplication is division. So when I know the total cost, I would do 225 divided by 75, and then I would do 525 divided by 75. And that would get how many days? So this one is going to be 7 and 3. And that's how you fill in the chart. The graph shows the number of beads a jeweler uses to make bracelets. So now we are on this one. We are on the graph. Write a ratio to show the number of beads necessary to make 1 bracelet. So if I'm writing a ratio for 1 bracelet, I need to find the unit rate because it means out of 1. And if I look here on my graph, here's your X, here's your Y. The 2 quantities are bracelets to beads. So this first point on the graph here is 230 because that's your X and your Y. Now I can also write that as a ratio because it is saying write a ratio of beads to bracelet. beads to bracelet. So I'm going to write that beads as a ratio to bracelet. So beads here is my Y. So here is beads. That's 30 over 2. And then I need to divide both by 2 to simplify it. And I get 15 over 1. And we want to know one bracelet. So how many beads would it take? It would take 15 beads for one bracelet. But it says in my problem here, we're going to go back to the problem. It says write a ratio. So it doesn't want a sentence there, it wants a ratio. So if I want beads to bracelet, it would be 15 to 1, or 15 to 1, or 15 over 1. You would write it like that. Question 3. A farmer raises chickens for eggs. Each chicken lays an average of 2 eggs. So if you have one chicken, it lays 2 eggs every 3 days. So it's a unit rate. I mean, we're finding the rate here because it's 2 eggs for every 3 days. And that says, how many eggs will 2 chickens lay in 30 days? So the first thing I can do is I can multiply these both by 10 to get 30 days. But that is just for one chicken. So I know that would be 20 eggs. And then I need to multiply that by 2 for 2 chickens. And that would be 40 eggs in 30 days. That is our lesson for Module 5, Lesson 2, Grade 6.